to support software businesses in these turbulent times. The first edition was done with a good partner of ours, which was the chairman of Code from Finland, Janne Kalliola. And that was just about a month ago, and when kind of the whole Corona situation started. And now, as the situation has evolved and we are kind of only starting to grasp the depth of it, I'm joined here by 4 software development industry insiders with very different backgrounds from all over Europe to discuss the current situation and future outlooks of our industry. So let's meet our panelists. Maybe we start with Andreas. Andreas is the co-founder and CEO of Beetroot. Hello.
Yeah, nice to meet you, everyone. Yes, I'm Swedish, but living in Ukraine since almost 8 years, building this Beetroot company. So we are around 450 people in Ukraine and 10 in Sweden. So we work on delivery of software products as an IT consultancy for countries in, clients in 20 countries, basically. And we also run an academy where we teach people in 18 different locations in Ukraine. So around 1% of all IT specialists in Ukraine have gone through our academy. And I hope I can give you some interesting insights on what's going on mainly in Ukraine, Sweden, and maybe some Israel as well.
All right. Thank you, Andreas. Then Przemek Berendt, the founder and CEO of Talent Alpha and former global marketing VP of Luxoft.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I'm a co-founder and CEO of Talent Alpha. We are building a marketplace that connects small and medium-sized IT services providers in all parts of the world, so Central and Eastern Europe, with clients around the globe. We've been running that business for about 1.5 years. Right now, connecting over 180 companies across 15 countries in CE and unlocking the enterprise side as we speak. Prior to that, I was part of a bigger IT services player that you might know, a company called Luxoft, for which I led the entire global marketing as well as the employer branding teams, basically looking at the 2 sides of the business model, one generating demand and the other generating talent supply. It's my privilege and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. And Kaido Petter, board member of Ignite.
Yes, hello everybody. So yeah, as Priit mentioned, I'm Kaido Petter. I'm a board member in Ignite. My main role is basically business development over here. And Ignite itself is a small development house, around 40 to 50 employees. So we mostly help our local corporates and banks with their project delivery, with our multifunctional teams. We can cover pretty much all aspects of the software development projects, start from analysis up until maintenance and everything. So we have been in existence for the past 10 years. So it's an anniversary this month for 10 years. And yeah, that's who we are.
Thank you, Kaido. Harri Koponen, CEO of Nortal Oy, so the Finnish body of Nortal and the CCO of Nortal AS.
Yes, hello, my name is really Harri, and it's, we are coming with some kind of a rather good sized company. We are operating currently in USA, in Finland, Germany, in Tallinn, Lithuania, Oman, and the Gulf countries. And we have about 900 employees currently, about 200 here in Finland. A good size company with aims to kind of change the world, to make it a better place to be in, and use the technology as a tool to change the things, how we do things today and tomorrow.
Cool, thank you, Harri. So basically, in a nutshell, we have one topic on the table, and then the bigger topic is mitigating the new situation, and we will kind of talk. We will approach it in 3 aspects. So one of the aspects is the situation that all those companies and panelists are already facing with their companies within this 1 month period. Then we look at the near future, the coming quarters. So how to like how to manage the huge uncertainty of the coming quarters, and then we will try to kind of predict a little bit and look further into the future. What could this new situation bring to the industry and to the software development industry at large? Regarding the interaction with the audience, we have the QA box. Feel free to ask questions along the way, and at the end of all this, we'll reserve some time, and everyone can. We will go through some questions with all the panelists. And we can also, before we start, we can also pull up a little poll, so we know who's joining us. And we will draw some data from it after the webinar. Meanwhile, we will leave this on for about 30 seconds. Meanwhile, just a note for the panelists: if I cut you, I'm really sorry if I cut you short. We give some time for everyone to speak, and that's what it is. But as soon as we are done with this, maybe we can start with Andreas. Maybe Andreas can start telling how and what the situation the past month has been for Beetroot. You have clients in Sweden, in other countries, and your supply comes from Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. So we, on the client side, we were, of course, like everyone, I think 1.5 months ago, pretty nervous, or when everything started. And we immediately, like the first 3 days of lockdown in Ukraine and measures in Sweden, we had like 3-4 clients who started to cut down on the contracts. But I think in overall over this month, so we had actually the biggest effects the first week, where several clients started to cut down on teams. So in overall, from our, say, 400 people, that's around 12-15 full-time contracts that disappeared. But we also see other few clients in specific industries like edtech, online education, health tech, who are growing at the same time. So in overall for us, for now, for March, the situation is like balanced. We haven't actually lost. We even had a record month in March, but we expect a little bit of a drop in April. And I think what we see now is that, and in terms of the sales pipeline, let's say 80% of what was in the pipeline disappeared. And I think now maybe extra 20% has come back out of that pipeline after a month. So the first panic reaction is over, but I think what we are like facing is sort of waiting. A lot of companies are waiting and seeing what's happening. Some of them are coming back to, the braver are coming back to decisions. And those who are brave, I think they will have a pretty interesting position, because on the market, what's happening is that you basically see I think an average, I don't have exact numbers, but the feeling is that an average of, let's say, 10 to 20% drop in overall sales already for most IT companies of different size. Basically, so we expect like short-term stop in new sales, many projects inflowing disappear, but it seems for now, at least it seems like most of the long-term engagement are continuing, and even some going forward, basically.
Okay, thanks. And Przemek, your situation in that sense may be a little bit different. That your customers are with more of a corporate profile. Have you had the same, like did you experience the same kind of panic at the start, and has it kind of eased down, or is it different for you guys?
I would say we see quite a similar pattern, but I think it's not as quick as Andreas described it, right? So we've seen a number of our deals in the pipeline going on hold, and people telling us, okay, we'll get back to you in May or June once the situation stabilizes. We had clients from the travel industry who basically froze, right? You know, their business froze. Some of them noted like 96% drop of revenues overnight. So of course, any innovation and investments were froze on the spot. On the contrary, you know, there are industries who are winning in this turmoil, such as, you know, e-commerce or edtech, as Andreas mentioned, and that's where we see kind of upbeat or even increase in the demand, right? So I think we should probably look at this question more from the industry perspective and who are the losers and winners. And I think these businesses will have a totally different reaction to what is going on around them, right? In my opinion, coming also from the corporate world, because similarly to Harri, I started my career at large corporations. What I believe is happening kind of in those enterprise level clients, they first went through the phase of implementing the business continuity plans, right? So they moved everybody offshore. They ensured that the business can run. And whereas in our smaller organizations, it took, 3 days, 2 weeks max, right? And some of the bigger organizations, it can take a month plus. Now, many of them are in the process of trying to figure out what this entire situation means to their annual plans, how this will impact the result at the end of the year. And only then they will move into decisions, right? And these decisions might be either we are cutting and saving money, right? And they will see cancellations of projects, or on the contrary, we are going to invest so we can come out as winners out of that. And again, I think the answer will depend on a very specific kind of case-by-case situation of this particular business. And that's what we see on the kind of the demand side of our equation. On the supply side, as we work with many smaller suppliers across the board, I would say, again, the odds are pretty much 50-50. Some of them see increase in demand, right? If they play with the winning industries. Some of them that were heavily exposed to industries that froze, for example, automotive, they're going pretty much bust, right? Because their cash flows don't allow them to sustain the people for too long, right? Projects were cut overnight, and they're being challenged, right? So I would say the picture so far is bittersweet, and the future will show how this all plays out. I have some theories, but I will park it for the second question.
Okay, but maybe that's a good point to go on to Kaido, because Kaido represents, let's say, a smaller dev house. So how is it possible, or what should you do as a smaller dev house to survive all this? And especially, it depends, of course, how diversified your portfolio is, I guess.
Well, yeah, in terms of our portfolio, then I would say like around 60% of it is corporate customers at the moment, meaning that we have long-term partnership with them and long-term projects. There hasn't been any stop in those kind of projects. We have seen some negotiations in terms of the budgets and terms. But where we took the heaviest hit, I would say, at the beginning was the new deals. The rest of the business that we do is like end-to-end projects, and starting the new projects is really difficult at the moment. So I can mirror what other guys said as well, that pretty much everything that was in the sales pipeline got either postponed or cancelled. So that has been a problem. So in terms of what you should do at the moment in order to survive, I would, and I will emphasize this later on as well, is that take care of your existing customers, really, and really take care of them and talk to them. That's at the moment, that's really important, I would say. But in terms of other work organizations, since I would say 80% of our employees are technical personnel, basically developers and designers, analysts, and everything like that, and they are mostly accustomed working like either outside of the office or anywhere. So in that sense, it hasn't been maybe a very big change, but it has been a change for those guys. And we have seen a loss of productivity for those guys who have, for example, small children at home. And hit on productivity is it's decent, I would say.
Okay. Harri, now everyone's talking about the clients or the sales pipeline running empty. Is like maybe the government projects now the safe haven during times like these?
I would say that if your pipeline is running empty, then you have not well prepared for the bad times. I've lived so long that I've seen these ups and downs very frequently. So basically, our pipeline has not run empty. We have been prepared for these kind of things. And one thing what is interesting, we also get new type of clients who are actually desperate to get fast actions and get more value for money. I have also seen that productivity has gone severely up in some of the developers. You know, the teams, all these new tools, meetings are much shorter. people don't talk so much nonsense, they go to the topic, and then people can start to coding. And I have seen actually some positive things in the work that people are feeling that, okay, now we can get things done. Crises are always bringing the opportunities. Of course, few customers has been hit, and they have been their cash flow stopped, so they had to do immediate actions. But despite of these things, we have not lost customers. Some delays we have seen, and some cost cuts, but also interesting new opportunities has come to the play. And I have to remind you that government business is never easy business. It's long-term, low margin, and tough requirements. So that I think that it's about the balance. Every company should think that you have a balanced. We have about 4 or 5 business areas what we are balancing our portfolio. So that's what keeps our business actually a rather healthy situation. Although we have some customer has been hit on this thing, and constantly we have to develop new things. Somebody said here that keep your existing customers happy. So it means that once now people are in homes or different locations, you need to be active. You need to be engaging the customers. You need to find out new type of opportunities for the customers to save money, and you can be innovative. And I think those companies who are actually providing new solutions and drives the business, try to be a partner, not just a kind of a vendor. I think that's where the big difference is coming from. But this is an opportunity. Definitely, this is a good opportunity to grow.
How do you feel about getting information from your clients right now? Is that probably there's a lot of unknown in their companies as well. Are you getting that information? And then how do you make sure you get the right information from them?
The funny thing is actually those executives are now much easier to get hold of. When they were in office, if you have their mobile phone numbers, that's the magic. If you have to call through the office numbers, now they are not anymore in office, but if you have a private personal direct connection to the customer, you get the information. And actually those customers are really seeking the opportunities to cooperate because they are also seeking how they can improve their situation. So it's actually win-win situation for everybody if we can talk in no bullshit way on the things.
Andreas, can you talk to your clients in a no bullshit way, in the sense that now we would imagine that remote work would get some boost from all this, right? And as an outsourcing partner, have the conversations with your clients changed, or prospective clients?
No, so we definitely, so during the first 2 weeks of this situation, we checked in basically with every significant client with direct calls and sort of got very transparent information about what's going on in each and everyone's business. And I think that, I mean, in terms of the clients we already work with, they are already open to remote work, but it's interesting that now our team in Ukraine is suddenly as close as your team who can live 1 block away, because we are equally distant. And I think this is, for us, like working a lot with selling that, well, remote is not that distance. I think on the long term, this is the big opportunity for us, because a lot of more, let's call it more conservative companies who have been not ready to have someone working out of office and so on, suddenly we are all working out of office, we are all learning this. And I think that this will create a huge opportunity in the long term for us. And another factor, I think, is that when you're working as a consultancy supplier, for some clients you might be the easiest to cut out in costs in the short term, depending on how critical you are for a specific client, of course. But on the other hand, when companies come back to growth again, but you are maybe in a little bit of cost saving mood and a little bit careful, it can be much less risky to scale up with remote teams and consultancies. So I think that now I'm sliding from the question a bit, but connection with client, I agree with Harri that it's actually rather easy to have a straight dialogue with everyone at this point. So.
I think you have hit on an interesting point, which is something that we observe as well. Like for us in building Talent Alpha, one of the biggest obstacles in telling the story was actually willingness to work with remote and distributed teams, right? And suddenly the entire world, overnight moved into remote work, and surprise, surprise, it works one way or the other, right? So I feel like post-COVID crisis, I think we will be dealing with a bit more favorable environment for our industry, right, to thrive, because people will be used to not only the setup, but also to the tools and the fact that, even though they haven't met people personally or people are sitting somewhere remote, they can collaborate effectively. To your point, Andreas, on cost, I think there is another kind of macro economical thing that is happening right now, and I think we'll see effect of that probably in the coming months, which is the fact that India, which was one of the bigger competitor kind of as the region to Central and Eastern Europe, is getting hit by COVID very heavily. They've been quarantined as well. There are stories of organizations where 5,000 people didn't show up for work the day after the quarantine was introduced, which basically makes for those big outsourcing operations kind of a bit of a headache. And I'm not sure if you've been to India, but the infrastructure there is not built to support working from home the way we can enjoy it here in Europe, right? So what I believe will happen, a lot of the companies who are doing large outsourcing deals to India will now rethink their strategy and start looking into alternatives to more kind of safer environments, both from the infrastructure as well as the legal point of view. And I think they will also look into more diversification, right? So not building those giga outsourcing sites, of 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 people, because we've seen those, but rather having a network of more distributed suppliers, which I think it's great news for all of us. Shall this happen, right?
It's not shall, it's actually happening. We are calling it as a nearshoring opportunity. And as many companies can put together, and I actually has long time talked about this, why to outsource in India, while you have actually in Europe, you have actually low cost locations. We have one gentleman here from Ukraine, fantastic engineers and education system. Many Eastern European countries are well prepared this game. And I think that this COVID has been the best blessing for the digital basically jump. This has really proved the people that this can be done, and it's actually more effective to do it over this kind of lines than physically flying around and spending time in the airports and train stations. I think that the world is not going to be the same when this is over. People will do the difference. Do we have to have offices? What type of offices we should have, and let the people to work from home, because it's as effective as being in office.
But can I
fully agree.
Quickly be really a little bit proactive towards maybe you and maybe to Harri as well on the same topic? It's I think there are nearshoring, outsourcing companies, and then there are the ones that focus on their local markets. So after this, what will be the advantage of say whatever the Finnish market ordering a lot from the Finnish suppliers, Estonian market ordering a lot from Estonian market? So what will be the advantage there?
I think the biggest thing what people don't actually recognize is the language. When you can speak your own native language, people actually feel they can share more. And then when you have these inexpensive resources, because they are not cheap, nobody don't sell any more cheap resources, but they are more inexpensive, then you can use this offshore or nearshore resources to fill in those kind of coding gaps, and you can do the blended kind of a delivery. But I think that nobody can replace this feeling that when you are really coming close to the customer and you really understand by nuances what the customer is meaning. If we all talk to English, we can't express ourselves fully to the fullest extent. I think that, and that's why people are saying that we are designing the wheel, and the other guys kind of thinking that they're making a square, because all these mistakes are happening typically in translation. we misunderstand the body language, or we misunderstand the language per se, and combination makes this much more perfect.
Yes, this is actually exactly what we have seen, this language thing, since we have been actually focusing on a Finnish market for quite a while now, prior to this crisis, and trying to offer our services in Finland. While we do, it's really easy to organize face-to-face meetings from Tallinn to Finland, to Helsinki, or Turku, wherever. Then the language is still a barrier that we feel that it's still there. So, what we have seen is that even prior to this crisis and during this crisis, that like companies outside Estonia are really open in remote working, but we would still have to have local representation of some sort, or who could handle the issues in local language as well. So for us, in that sense, actually, the situation hasn't changed a lot. We have been working like this for a while now, but just would hope that the results would be better.
Okay, maybe we can move on to the topic of basically staffing your own companies. What we hear or see is that more and more developers, for the first time in maybe 10 years, are coming to the market. Before, it was really hard to attract talent, right? And now all of a sudden there is an influx of new good talent on the market because some companies are having layoffs. How will this influence the sort of the outsourcing or software development market?
I can start maybe. No, I mean, we are trying to tell our potential clients that this is the best time ever if you want to hire, right? Because that's really true. And I think that it's hard to compare with other markets for me, but I think that the Ukrainian market is taking an early hit, but it will also have an early return. So what we saw on the market, like the outsourcing market in Ukraine, grow as most in 2009, 2010, so on the bottom of the previous crisis. But I think for those companies who has either the possibility or dare, or who can do it, basically, will have a good chance. Right now we see 50% decrease of the amount of vacancies for the last month, and that is, I think tripling 4 times amount of active applicants who are applying for various roles. So that's a huge opportunity. And I think also another thing that might happen is that we already saw a trend. Ukraine IT market is pretty scattered with many different suppliers. Not so Luxoft is actually one of the few big ones, but there are thousands of companies with less than 100 people. And what we were seeing already before this crisis was that it was getting tougher and tougher for those companies to work with their sales. And I think what we can see now is that stronger companies in the industry who has the capability might go for some acquisitions or integrating smaller teams into bigger ones. That trend was already happening, and I'm assuming that it might stop temporarily for a couple of months, but I assume like later this year you will see maybe more of those deals. I might be wrong, but that's my theory.
My take on it is that it's all function of demand for those services, right? So the question, we probably need to look a bit back into history and see what happened to the industry in the previous crisis. I think that can give us a sense of feeling of how things can evolve. And as Andreas said, what happened, back in the days was the industry took a dip, right? It went down, just to go up, a year after, and the growth was on steroids, right? I actually pulled up some data on that, looking into not only the CE players and the largest ones like Luxoft or EPAM, but also in the global and Indian players, and all of them had the same pattern, right? So there was a dip between 2008 and 2009, and then there was a rapid kind of on steroids growth, right? The question is, how long will this dip last, right? Like what I think characterizes the COVID crisis is that it's very fast in a way that we all hit it, and the impact on our daily lives and economy Well, the only question that I think everybody around the world is trying to answer is whether the recovery would be so quick or it would be actually extended because of how rapid it was. Nevertheless, I do agree that I think we'll see a short-term turn into more of an employer market. So there'll be more candidates on that. But whether you should hire or not, I think this, again, it depends on whether you can utilize these talents right now or whether you can afford keeping them unutilized for an extended period of time.
I would say that this is pretty interesting time because I think that finally the younger generation understands that the workplace has a meaning. It's not the endless place where you can kind of ask all kind of things, because the crises are coming, and they have been just this time, the last crisis, we don't almost remember when it was. But it means that also we as an employer, we need to be responsible that because we know that the software business will grow. It's not going to decline anywhere. We know that there will be more work to be done than we have skilled people. So I think that it's a constant balance that how we can keep these young, talented people motivated, and also understanding that the company needs to survive in different situations. And of course, and what kind of a style we go over this, that's do we push the thing in an offshore? Are we utilizing the nearshore resources and the local resources effectively? And use the combination and mix, because basically, if we are clever, we should utilize constantly the best workforce on the task in hand. And I think that this is where the software business has failed. We have not been able to manage to put all the best talent people in the teams. But I think that this COVID crisis is putting us to thinking completely new way that, we have virtual teams to handle certain things, that we can quickly put the so-called SWAT team together to handle certain type of customer situation, and dismantle the team to get them to the next task. I think that this is a good opportunity to teach the organizations to use this offshore or nearshore and local resources seamlessly, so that it's actually seamless experience, and person is in a project a few hours or a few days or a few months, but it will be changing, and this is the right time to teach our customers that this is how you can get the best out of all the worlds.
But what will be then the so the role of a software development house as such will also change in a way that, for example, if we look at what Talent Alpha is doing, it's putting pre-vetted teams from the organization from software development houses together. So organizations on the delivery level also work together to deliver something for the end customer. The same happens on the Allies platform. Our partners do the same. So will this change the way that that delivery companies work together as well?
I would say that we have five, or how many companies? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 companies here. It means that these kind of combinations are coming more often to be used. So the key quick question is how I know what are the best competencies, what your companies are presenting.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't have all the competencies in-house all the time and just idling. You would have to have an extensive partners network in order to handle certain projects. So it only makes sense, this kind of collaboration.
And I can only echo that. We've been preaching the model that we call the human cloud. So basically a number of entities and professionals and talent working together and being assigned to opportunities pretty much on the fly, kind of allowing clients to scale up and down their operations freely. And as we were preaching that model for a year and a half, I think now after COVID, it would be more natural for large companies to consider that as an interesting alternative to the world that they knew before. Like before COVID, we have spoken to clients who were working on so-called total workforce management strategy, where they say, okay, this part of our workforce are going to be permanent hires. This is what we will do, what we'll give to the large outsourcing companies. But 10, 15, 20% of our headcount is going to be more dynamic, and they were experimenting with different models. I think these dynamic models will become even more common as we come out of that crisis.
I can also echo that we see, I mean, we have around 30 different partner companies who we work with on a regular basis with exchanging people on the bench, basically. And I can see that during the last month, all of these conversation has become much more active. And I mean, for us, like we have maybe 15 people on the bench. And at the same time, we have 30, 40 people out with partner teams. So it's always a matter of what you have at a certain time. I think this will be more and more of this, of course.
And I think that then the key thing is that you need to be scouting these partners well, because once the problems hit you, and if you don't have a good scouting, this like NHL or NFL, like we are in a drafting situation. Who is in the #1 draft and who is #2 draft and why? And if you have not done the homework before these kind of situations happen, you can't actually serve the customers quickly enough. And then the business will go to somebody else. And I think this is the lessons what we can learn. That be better prepared, do have a list ready, and have the model of that you have this offshore, nearshore, local shore ready, and the combination is the key. And we have also found in Finland that actually we have also in Finland even nearshore, so that you don't have to go to the Ukraine or somewhere. We have actually much lower level cost in certain places in Finland today than going up abroad. And that's an interesting new discovery that people have found out lately.
I think this cost arbitrage element, you know, I'm not sure about all of the currencies in the region, but Polish zloty was hit pretty heavily, you know, compared to a dollar. So, you know, overnight, again, we became cheaper by roughly 10%, right? Probably it's temporary, but again, the gap towards India just got a bit smaller, right? So
I hope you became more expensive, not cheap.
Well, yeah. Aside from the cost, you have to take into account the quality of the partner as well. So it's not only about the cost. So as actually Harri mentioned as well, you have to do the scouting and the drafting. You would have to know what is the level of the service that you will get from your partners. So that's really, really important. Otherwise, there is a big chance you will disappoint your customer.
Kind of sticking with this NHL drafting analogy, I would agree, I think, and you should look at it at number of levels, right? So one is individual players, so like how well do you understand how good are the people sitting in these organizations? Second, how well can they play as a team, right? And only then you look kind of at the total quality of the brand and the organization that you're working with and their past experiences, basically the scores that they've had in the past. And I think all of those three levels brought together will help you to simply kind of figure out with whom you should play in that next match.
And it's funny. It seems that the whole so from the discussion, it seems that the software industry has reached that point, and we are all from different markets. And if SODA, Software Development Association in Poland, is managing the bench, Przemek is managing somehow the bench of his partners. We do it in Estonia, and Andreas does it in Ukraine. This model, so this is kind of first tier, and the first tier is that the software development delivery businesses themselves understand it, and then to kind of get that more integrated into the customers, the ones that buy the software development services. And then we see it starting to happen more and more, but maybe not as much as within the industry at this moment, I think. But hey, maybe we take some questions also in between from the audience. We have one question, for example. Okay, let's take this one. Has your approach to collaboration, we continue on the same topic, has your approach to collaboration with other companies changed as well as your approach to sales in the current times? Take either sales or collaboration.
So from sales point of view, yes, the sales part has changed. The tone of the conversations has changed for us. So prior to this crisis, we were talking about growth with our potential customers. Now we are more in talks of how to influence the bottom line and how how to handle costs more efficiently. For example, what we see is that any kind of workflow or internal processes automation projects is something that companies are really interested in. Just at a given moment, they are still hesitant in making the commitment because they don't feel, so they don't have the full understanding of how deep does this crisis go. I believe that once this isolation ends and the limits are lifted, then we can see the actual effect, or end result, what this crisis brings, and probably then the flow of projects will free up a little bit as well.
I have to say that we have seen our company has been operating this way already before the crisis, but I have seen now that suddenly this crisis mode has put the companies to seek the other side, like how we are doing and can we do the work together. And I think this is a positive sign because, as I said, we have not enough software engineers to cover all the needs what are out there. So the best thing is that we could work as a teams and find out who is better in what area, and then can offer seamlessly the services to the customers, and not to try to kind of kill and compete with the prices, because I think end of the day, too low prices means bad quality. It always ends up badly for everybody. So I think the reasonable price, reasonable resources, and skilled and qualified project managers will be some kind of an answer, this kind of a hybrid type of thing in the future.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the things that is new is that we all have a common topic to discuss, right? So it's very easy to engage people into a conversation, providing you can reach them, which leads me to my second point. I think the one thing that has changed is everyone now moved to social selling, right? And it was already hot prior to COVID. I feel like it's twice as hot, and the number of messages we all received, from one or the other software house selling their services to us increased. So you can imagine what it is on the enterprise client side. So there's becoming a lot of noise in social media, which makes the personal contact, relationship, and ability to actually phone someone an extra value, right? So if your sales force has these relationships in place, I think back to Harry's point before, I think this makes it actually an easier conversation, not easier sale, but easier conversation than what it used to be in the past. And of course, one of the big impacts, especially for those who are only starting their journey on the market, is the fact that pretty much every industry event has been canceled for the months to come. I think they will only start coming back maybe in September timeframe. So half of a year is of a pipeline for many of these companies is basically killed, right? The question is it going to come back with a double impact in the second half or not? I think it's remained to be seen. Personally, I'm kind of on a side that it's going to take a bit more time. I expect recovery, in early 2021. I think this year would be rough for everyone on the market.
I think small comment from our side. I think a big difference is that basically there's so much noise and cold outreach going on out there. So we basically stopped doing that just now and just working much more closer with current clients, with network references and so on. And that seems still to work, maybe actually better to some extent. It probably always works, but now it's sort of, it feels almost useless at this time to sort of be part of the noise. We sort of focus on quality, focus on current networks. Yeah.
Well, the cold outreach can be done in a different ways. So it's just finding new ways to do it. So just to cut through the white noise. Yeah, but the old ways aren't working anymore. That's definite. Yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to address the first part of the question, which is collaboration with other companies. In fact, we do see increase of initiatives like the one we are meeting today. Also, communities in different geographies are bringing together, coming together and sharing experiences, which is great. And I think this, this new world, a new reality would be living in after this would be way more networked, and all of these interactions and relationships we have, there are like 50 of us on this call. I think many of us will be leveraging that going down the road.
I hope that this will come to the situation where actually we software companies, we don't have to go to Gartner events and all these kind of seminars. This is a good seminar. We can kind of use the technology to bring the people together on the right topics, and this is not going to cost us 2 days travel and a lot of hotel nights in strange places. If we have to do this, let's do it once a year in some kind of Hawaii or some nice place where people can enjoy. But otherwise, we should use this technology and said, hey, we can bring people together inexpensively and effectively, and they can be this kind of topics what everybody will contribute, and this will start to bring this world together as a nicer place, and you can start to learn what Andreas' company is doing, what Kaido and what Brent's your company is doing, and that's how you can kind of build these applications and solutions by copying and make it better, not to start to innovate everything from the beginning. I think this is a beginning of the new era in the IT industry, what we are experiencing right now.
Mm-hmm. And adding to the sort of topic of events and so on, I mean, we were also, and I think we will do it later as well, but we were doing so many offline events in our offices and so on in different locations, and now we're doing webinars instead, and actually you reach just as many or even more people, but without all the logistics and stuff. So that's kind of amazing if you think about it.
All right, so let's continue on the same kind of question. There is like a follow-up to this question, like what are the methods to bring in new business in these times? And I think there is an interesting topic that almost everyone here has mentioned, is that maybe there are not new ways, and cold outreach maybe doesn't work at the moment, but what works the best is if you call your existing customers and continue building that relationship at this moment, because at least that's what we feel with our partners. Absolutely everyone at all times is available, and it's like you can call whoever, almost, at least that's my experience, but everyone picks up the phone, and like organizing a webinar like this as well, this has been put together in a matter of a week, and you have such amazing people sharing their experiences. So it is people with the right kind of offer that you have are very open to talk at this moment, because everyone's trying to find the new norm, and everyone wants to kind of find, and it's all about talking and communication probably.
Well, I still don't agree about your view on cold outreach. I think it still works. It's just a question of how you do it. So what are the methods? Basically, you probably should start with your value proposition. So how are you valuable actually, or what kind of value do you drive? So if you have been doing like nice to have and nice to look at stuff, then you should reconsider your business model. Basically, you have to be a painkiller at the moment and emphasize this on your outreach, but how you can actually help. And first of all, of course, find out what are the basis of the problems that prospects have. But for us, for example, at the moment, social media is still working as an outreach channel and driving in new leads. And this kind of webinars that we are holding today, they seem to be the new norm, I would say. Email, if you're trying to reach to new prospects over email, then you're probably out of luck. Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, I would add to that. Try to leverage, the ecosystems around you, right? So if there are associations where your clients might be hanging out, or whether there are organizations like SODA, ABSL, or platforms like Allies Digital or Talent Alpha, give it a shot. You can always, this comment includes a bit of a product placement, but I think you need to try to find new ways of getting in front of your clients, right? And also your allies, right? In a way that you can collaborate with someone who might have a need, right? Actually, your next client might be someone that you haven't expected might be your client. In fact, what we've seen in our business is that our suppliers became our clients, right? And I think we'll see more and more of that.
And I think that we also start to see this, that companies have to start to make much better offers. So that why we have to wait that McKinsey's and Payne's and all the other guys are kind of creating nice strategies, and then Accenture's and other guys are writing what those guys thought, and then we put some software companies to wrote them. I think that software companies need to rise higher level, that we need to have a better understanding about the customer business so that we actually can be consultants to the customer business. And then internally, we will talk to the developer team and say, this is basically what needs to be done. And actually, you need to create it before you go and sell it. And I think that this is going to be the difficult journey for software companies, that don't wait that somebody is bringing you the RFI or RFP, but you actually have to go in and create it.
Well, at least if you don't have the resources to create it, at least think it through thoroughly and analyze it by yourself. You might not need to create it. You can still sell the idea. You don't have to have a box.
We have an interesting question or a comment actually from Mehis Pärn. He's saying that I just read the news in April, that in April there's been a record number of new IT companies founded in Estonia. So whatever what the market is, but what do you think that why is this?
Good luck for them.
Yes, I saw the news as well, and I was a little bit surprised.
I think that can be explained, and this is what I think about it. So, I think people are being let go, and of course, the natural instinct is to start a new business, and it's going to be twice as difficult as in a good economy. But it's not a secret that some of the greatest startups were founded during the crisis. Airbnb or Dropbox in the past one. However, what is going to be extremely difficult from a startup perspective, and I can speak about it firsthand, is finding money to finance your operations, right? So if you have that runway that you can live without income for an extended period of time, you might be in luck if your idea is strong. But if you want to build another software house, I think that might be a bit of a challenge. There was also part of the question about freelancing. I think freelancing will struggle. And the reason why I think so is that in this total workforce management, freelance was only getting kind of the stuff that nobody else wanted to do that. Pretty much in most of the cases. And I'm generalizing, I recognize that. But I think this is the stuff that it gets cut out of budgets first, right? And you can actually see that firsthand when you look at the stock price of Upwork, for example, right? That went down south after all of that happened. The number of orders for freelance workers is being dropping, and the supply is increasing, right? So that kind of shows you what is happening to that part of the market.
That's why I wrote my answer in a chat room. I actually believe that if you start to do the freelancing, first of all, these good clients, they don't like to kind of be sort of a free agent. If we go back to the NHL, you have to be a bloody good free agent. So it's like Ovechkin is suddenly getting the free agency, but there's not too many Ovechkin around there. Yeah. And I think that if you are Ovechkin, then it's okay to be freelancer, but otherwise you are quite stuck in the company processes. Because all the big companies, they have a certain processes how to make sure that the quality is there, sustainability is there, and the guarantees can be fulfilled. So the good times, too good and easy times are over.
To that point, prior crisis, there was a lot of talks, especially in the US, that the gig economy is becoming the major driving force of the economy. I think this is proving that it's not the model of the future, right? What I think the model of the future is, in fact, is those smaller companies, collaborating and moving very swiftly and nimbly throughout the economy. And that's where I think, companies like those who are on the panel, as well as those who are attending this session, are actually set to thrive, right? It's all down to like, how good is your unit, how you can differentiate your value proposition, and how quickly you can move. And the team will always beat a single freelancer, right?
I actually, in a way, it follows this discussion. We have 4 minutes left. There is an interesting philosophical comment or question, I think, which was posted as well. Is so basically, COVID crisis, of course, now borders are closed, but at the same time, we are here talking together, everyone from different markets. So do you see the ongoing crisis as yet another obstacle for cross-European partnerships, or rather as a driving force for closer European cooperation?
Completely opposite. Kind of.
I feel the same way now. It's not going to be an obstacle at all.
It's moving faster than the virus.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing we hear from a lot of our developers here in Ukraine that finally we are equal. I mean, in terms of that now we are working equally distant, which means basically equally close as well. So in our world, I think it's definitely moving closer, actually.
And I would echo that. And if you look at it, you know, what's different this time than the crisis 12 years ago, now we have the technology and infrastructure to enable that. There is way greater trust because we've been doing it for, you know, nearly 2 decades across boundaries. The language capabilities increased. We all speak English, you know, on a very good level. So I think this is the only way I think Europe can effectively compete with, you know, India or China going forward, right? Like by playing together.
I would say that actually even better. Europe has much to, Western European countries and Eastern European countries have more to offer because we have this kind of our differences, but at the same time we have our specialities. And if we can pull those things together cleverly, every single time that we have this kind of a electro-Lego kind of a type of thing that's we are almost like a Lego standardized thing, but we can put multiple ways these Legos together. I think that's going to be the answer for this kind of a new world order, what we try to do. And Europe have to learn to do things differently.
All right. I think this is a super nice positive note to kind of start wrapping this whole thing up. And I think the feeling that at least I got, I think we are all, or we can raise maybe hands, quite positive about the long term. Yeah. So that's good. And I think our panelists maybe deserve a nice virtual round of applause. I don't know how that works, but
you can put emoji. You can put emoji.
Yeah, please do that. But I think in one way or another we can kind of we can continue this discussion. I mean, I think all of us 5 here would be happy to talk to, I don't know, anyone who's listening that is on the buyer side about whatever, pre-vet the teams and continue the conversation whichever way you want. So I think reach out to any of us. If it's about if you're a software house looking for to increase partnerships there through your sales, maybe managing your bench. I think we all have some solutions there as well. And let's see in a month's time or so, maybe there's another reason to do something similar like this again.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
And thank you for your questions, everyone.
Happy birthday and stay away from the virus. Move faster.
Yes.
It's your birthday.
Oh.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks.